Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. Today's topic is Angel Padael, who governs the month of Gemini. And if you're excited like me, please leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with family and friends. Let's get started. Padael translates Redeemer of God. It says he supports us with healing energy, protects and defends us in the heavenly courts, ensuring that the verdict is always in our best interest. What does it mean, our best interest, and why do we need a redeemer? First, because the way we look at different parts in our life that we would like to be removed. It's human nature. We don't want opposition. But Angel Padael helps us to find light in the darkness. There's a beautiful parable that says, one day the darkness said to the light, I hear so much about you, so why can I not see all of you? To which the light replied, because if you were fully see me, you would no longer exist. And the same would be true if I were to see all of you. And as a result, the two decided to remain separate but equal partners in games of shadow and light. And so is the world of forms and shapes born. So much of life is like this parable. It's the interplay of opposites, always playing one against the other. So it's not that we want the absence of challenges. We want to be able to get to a place where we recognize that the challenges were seeds that allowed us to grow our blessings and joy. When a person looks back at their life, what would be the most important are not necessarily the great days. They are beautiful and we should enjoy them. But when our soul leaves this world and looks back at our life, it will look back at those moments, days of challenges and darkness, from which we were able to extract even one spark of light. The Kabbalists explain that there are two different types of light, light from light and light from darkness, and that we are not in this world to bring light from light, meaning the real purpose of our soul and the way that we actually achieve our greatest growth is what the Aramaic term says, Neora migo chashucha, meaning light out of darkness. And when you think about your life in that way, for sure you appreciate those days when everything goes right, but when the day is not going right, when you're feeling that heaviness, internal or external, you have the ability to say, this is not just a terrible thing I'm going through or bad things I'm going through. There is a purpose to this. Not only is there a purpose to this, but this is actually the purpose of life, to be able to go through those experiences and grab a moment of some light, of some elevation. If we're able to reframe our life in that way, when we experience challenges and challenging times, it gives us much greater excitement to go through them. There's the biblical story of Jonah. Jonah was a young man who was called upon to bring a message of change to a city called Nineveh. And he doesn't want to do it for different reasons, so he decides to run away from his purpose. He takes a boat and he tries to leave town. A huge storm comes and the boat is about to be swallowed up by the ocean. And they ask God whose fault it is, the fact that they're in this storm, whose fault it is that they're about to all die in the boat. And Jonah says, it is true that this storm and this difficult situation is my fault because I am trying to run away from my calling, and that the only solution to your problem is to throw me overboard. And Jonah is thrown overboard and he's swallowed up by a whale, and he's in there for 3 days. And he experienced great darkness. And then after 3 days of pain, of darkness, he's fighting and he's meditating and he's praying and he's crying. The whale throw him out onto the land. And there he is, awakened again. He realized there is no way of running away from his life's purpose. And he goes and he brings the message and he brings great transformation. What's really interesting in Jonah's story, being swallowed by a whale, Jonah was experiencing darkness, as we all do at different times. But it wasn't that he was stagnant in his darkness. The mistake that we often make, thinking I'm in a prison of darkness and I just can't go anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm stuck, trapped, and only when the clouds of darkness will be removed, then I'll finally be able to do something purposeful or do something. The secret of the story of Jonah is that even while he was in the darkness, the whale was bringing him towards his purpose. And even though he didn't see that, just knowing that darkness is actually movement. It's movement that maybe I don't understand. It's movement that is not my choice. But just as Jonah was being moved in the belly of the whale towards his purpose while experiencing great sadness and darkness, that really is both the purpose and the way to experience darkness. You can be sad, and we all have those overwhelming times, but know that the darkness is not a state, a prison that hopefully someday you can get out of this darkness. It's actually moving you forward. That's the real meaning of true redemption. Even when we are in the darkness and sad and crying, and we feel that it's all encompassing us, know that the darkness is moving you forward. And even if in the moment you can't embrace that darkness, just know that every time, whether it's a moment, an hour, or a day, that darkness is moving you forward rather than the time when you're inspired and feeling good. This is the power of this angel. The strength to understand that whatever happens is never against us. Just like working out, it might hurt the next day, but you know it's good. Giving birth, that pain allow the baby to come out. All that pain and effort brings huge happiness and joy for the whole family. It also says about Angel Padael, and he is appointed over all these medicines in the world and to bring in the prayers of those who suffer from pain, sickness, and sorrow. And it goes up with all these prayers and brings them before the Creator. There was a Kabbalist named Nahum Ish Gamzu, who, when anything happened to him in life, challenging, painful, he would say, this is also for the good. Which means, even though his experience in that moment was dark, of a great challenge, he didn't experience it as light in that moment, but he embraced it because he knew that ultimately it was going to be for his benefit. When we talk about spirituality, spiritual study or work, that might be the most important test that we should have for ourselves. The most important test is how embracing are you more today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today, of this time of darkness, of challenges. The only way you can really come to that is if you are truly focused in life to transform. The most important part of spiritual work is knowing that whatever I am today, I have to become different. My ego has to be diminished. My desire to receive for oneself alone has to be diminished. If that's my goal, then it becomes much easier to embrace the dark times or the heavy times. And through that, I become elevated. And through that, it's actually the only way that I can come to be the person that I'm meant to be. When you do that, that's when you're able to transform and ultimately embrace the darkness, ultimately embrace the heavy times, and also for the world. There's a really nice essay by Oscar Wilde, the way he speaks about the poet. And he says that the poet is one step nearer to the truth. And the understanding is that when things are going our way, we don't usually take the time to look inside. One of the great gifts of challenging times, of oppositions, is that if used properly, it gives us the time to truly come to truth, to see ourselves, to see our lives. If we didn't have these times of darkness, then we would never really come to a true knowledge of ourselves and maybe changes that we need to make. There's a beautiful section in the Zohar that speaks about 3 words: locks, openings, and chambers. And the Zohar says that when you come to a place that seems closed to you, a person wants to find their soulmate and they cannot find them, or is going through a dark time and doesn't see the way out. That lock is not something that goes away, but if you persevere through the lock, it becomes an opening. And still the opening is relatively small. If you persevere through the opening, it becomes a chamber filled with blessings. So the idea is that the darkness, when used properly, is not something, oh, I got to get rid of that prison, or I got to get rid of that darkness, so I got to get rid of that challenge. Every lock or every time of darkness is when you persevere through it and you have the proper consciousness around it and you push yourself and know and embrace it, becomes an opening. And then even in the opening, if the opening is small, you persevere through the opening, it becomes a chamber filled with blessings. And the ultimate chamber filled with blessings for our lives can never be achieved if not through the lock, if not through that time of darkness. So when you understand that, it gives you a true understanding of what darkness is. Darkness is the lock to the opening, to the chamber full of blessings. But only if we persevere, only if we embrace it, only if we say, I don't want to get out of this. I want to transform this darkness into the opening, into the chamber filled with blessings. If we know that the greatest moment of our lives are those times of darkness, why? Not because we go through them, but because we embrace them. We transform them into blessings. That is the work of consciousness, of the consciousness that Angel Padael can help us with. Specifically this month, embracing those dark times. The most important change that comes from this understanding is not necessarily that you enjoy the darkness, but that you know you need it and you come to love it, because you know that this is a place for me to persevere through and ultimately becomes my chamber filled with blessings. But not if you're trying to get rid of it, okay, as soon as possible, and not if you see it as something to just get through, even if you're not enjoying it, knowing that this will become an opening, a chamber of blessings at some point. A person can go through life and ask, why have I not found my light, my blessings? Well, you went past every single one of them and you saw them as darkness, and you went past rather than knowing they were a lock to a room, to a chamber, and taking the time to open that lock and persevere and embrace it. If whenever you have a challenge, rather than try to deal with it, you embrace it, it becomes your true power. It becomes that thing that makes you special and powerful and brings you to your purpose in life. Now, I do want to emphasize, my teacher, Kabbalist Rav Berg, used to say that oftentimes people love to hug their chaos. In extreme cases, such as addictions, many times you see people that are not necessarily going through darkness, but they put themselves in it. Or there are some people, for example, who get energy from telling their sad story to everybody who just want to listen. Of course, there are times where you say no more of this, and not just embracing that darkness, whether to yourself or to a friend. We all go through times, if we catch ourselves, we realize this is my story, my sad story. I keep replaying it in my mind. Enough is enough. So embracing darkness is not about wallowing in it. It's when it's happening to us, accepting and embracing it. But when there is the way out, we have to take it. Of course, it's our responsibility. So just to summarize, it's about your experience, not necessarily about your understanding. Many times in dark times, we ask, why is this happening to me? Sometimes we understand why, but often we don't. And for any individual to think that I can come to understand everything, kind of silly. Our mind just doesn't have that capability. So when you realize that everything that happens in your life is part of a much more complex process, 99% of which we cannot really understand, we try to understand the 1% that we can. But if I accept that there are positive forces involved in my life, then the desire or even ability to understand, not even possible or necessary, but to experience it as positive. And therefore, when people come to me and say, why is this happening? My answer sometimes is, I can't necessarily explain to you why, but I can tell you one thing, that ultimately it will be for your benefit, and ultimately it's bringing you towards a blessing. And this is from experience, and I promise you that the more you remind yourself of that, the more you will learn to love the darkness. But if your process is, no, I need to understand, it will almost never happen. So as it comes to embracing the challenging times, the head is much less important than the heart and the soul, which means it's not just about understanding why it's happening to me. It's about experiencing it and knowing that it has a purpose. And then that can bring you to embrace it and ultimately even loving it. If you haven't yet taken my one-to-one coaching with angels, that is zoom into your tikkun, correction, karma, check out the link below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe, and share. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye.